Honorable Yakko.
Present.
Thank you.
Mr. Mulder.
Honorable Mulder.
Good morning. All chair colleagues, I'm present. Yep.
Mr. Cuthbert.
Cuthbert. Honorable Cuthbert.
He's on the platform, Chair.
All right.
I think Ms. Mantashe and Ms. Mwatsu may have trouble linking, Chair. But we'll address that.
Right.
Busy following that up.
Okay. No, that's fine. Then there's a crackling noise. I'm not sure who might be connecting in the noisy part. Can I actually then ask that it looks like we can proceed because of the representation of the committee. Committee members actually do have a quorum. We can actually proceed.
Yes, Chair.
We can put up the agenda then, Secretariat, on the screen.
We will do so, Chair.
Yes. We don't actually have any apologies, obviously.
Chair, we have one apology. Mr. Thring is requested to leave at 10 o'clock, Chair, because he needs to attend another meeting, Chair.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Can we just put on the agenda, honorable members? I'm sure you can actually have a view of the agenda. We actually have an update on SABS on its turnaround strategy. We will discuss that as well. And then we do actually have an update on the NRCS on its turnaround strategy and discussion of that one. Then we do actually have the fourth quarter DTI-EDD formalization, which is a formal consideration of the report. And then we do have the item of committee business. There is an update on NLC matter, and then there will be actually consideration of the third quarter, third term program for the committee. And we actually got the consideration of minutes as the last point on the agenda, because we did actually agree that we will have actually a bunch of minutes. They have been circulated to members, and we think members have actually had the opportunity to look at that. Can I actually ask the members to then give an indication if ever there's adjustment or not, or if ever you agree to proceed with the agenda as proposed, honorable members?
Chair.
Okay, Honorable Mbuyane.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I rise to propose the adoption of the agenda.
Okay, there's a proposal to adopt. The mover.
Mrs. Hermans, Chair.
Honorable Hammond.
I rise to second the adoption of the agenda, Chair.
Okay. Is there any objection on the agenda? If not, can I then agree a request that we proceed to pick up on the items as proposed? Can I welcome all of you? Can we get Secretary to then take up the next item on the agenda, which will be
Chair, maybe.
Yes.
Chairperson, maybe before the chair, the secretariat, I wanted to check whether we're recording our meeting.
We should be. Secretariat, we are just.
We are.
Okay. It is being recorded, Honorable Mbuyane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It is. Yeah. Can we actually then pick up the first item on the agenda?
Chair.
And welcome the teams which actually have got through. And obviously, I think it's linked to what we have discussed in the previous part. Remember, we have just adopted our oversight visit reports. And I think the two entities part is also actually highlighted as part of that visit. And obviously, there were issues that were raised. I won't go to detail. And I think maybe let's actually agree that we take the first presentation, which is SABS, and then allow me to welcome the team. They will actually then have the department and the entity taking us through. Can we have the presentation? It's SABS. I think that's the first one.
Yeah. I think Ms. Colt will lead the delegation, the presentation, Chair.
Okay. Good morning, Ms. Coles.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning.
And welcome to the whole team and the department.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation, Chair. Chair, I think I'm pretty well known to the committee. I'm Jody Schultz. I'm currently the lead administrator. I would just like to ask the SABS colleagues in the room if they could just put their videos on very briefly, just to introduce themselves, Chair, so that you get a sense of who's all in the room. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Can we get just unmute and then press the video so that we can see you? Mbuyane did say we must record. We want to see the handsome and beautiful through the screen.
Colleagues, do you just want to quickly introduce yourselves? I've got Tatima first, Sadvir, Tina, Niels, Lungelo.
There's Lungelo. We can see you, Lungelo. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Jody. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. My name is Gati Matemba, the Acting Executive for Certification, SABS. Thank you.
Welcome, Katina.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, honourable members. My name is Sadvir Basoon. I'm the Executive for the Standards Division.
Welcome, Basoon.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honourable members. My name is Tina Miraj, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer at the SABS.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good morning, honourable Chair and honourable members. My name is Niels Flaten. I'm the General Manager, Corporate Strategy.
Thank you very much and welcome.
Good morning, Chairperson and honourable members. My name is Lizo Makele, the Human Capital Executive at SABS.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome. I think.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Lungelo Dobongwana. I'm the Acting Executive for Laboratory Services and Sales.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome. I think Ms. Coles, the team has actually accounted fully, and we're happy that at least we are seeing the handsome and beautiful faces. Can we actually then get, I'm sure that there will be a DDG who will be speaking to the issues first before we actually take the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Chair. I'll hand over to Thandi.
Okay. Pele, DDG, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Honourable Chair. Good morning, honourable members. Today, as the Chair has already indicated, we will be taking the committee through the work that has been done in collaboration between the department and the two entities on their turnaround strategy, with the intention, for example, particularly on SABS, on stabilizing the institution, looking at ways in which we can reorientate and reposition SABS as our key standard-setting body in the country, and also to assist, for example, in particular NRCS, in dealing with some of the issues that I have had in the past, recurring audit issues, issues on performance. I think today's presentations, the committee will realize that we have done a lot of work in those areas that the committees had previously highlighted. And I think the visit that the committee undertook at the beginning of the year has also assisted us in focusing in some of the areas that the committee had identified. So I'll hand over to Jody to take us through the work that has been done by SABS, and then we'll integrate and engage after the actual presentation. Thank you so much, Chair, for the opportunity to make a brief introduction.
Thank you, Ms. Jody.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. I've noted that we have been allocated 25 minutes, Chair. So we've got quite a lengthy slide deck. What I will do is I will talk to some of the issues, and then some of the issues I believe the presentation has been reviewed already by the committee, and then we will obviously be available to engage, and I think we would welcome the substantive engagement. So thanks very much also to DDG Thandi Pele for the introduction and just indicating. Chair, just looking at the presentation that we've I'm just trying to we've introduced ourselves, Chair, just to give a brief recap on what it is that we have been doing. It's part of the turnaround strategy. It's been in 3 phases. We'll chat a bit about the new course that we're charging, and then we'll also indicate in a bit of detail the various initiatives that we've put in place to improve operational efficiency and grow revenue. And then also just to share with the committee very briefly what it is that we've been doing in terms of COVID-19 and the support. Chair, you'll note that quite a few of the colleagues, when they introduced themselves, they'd indicated they were acting. It's been a deliberate decision for us to do that. We're doing an organizational-wide review, and the intention of that is to look at both a macro and a micro structure. So the impact has been that we do have people caretaking various positions, and we will then, once we've reorganized how we look in terms of a structure, we'll then fast track those appointments. But just to recap, I think the committee is aware that Mr. Garth Strachen resigned, as well as Ms. Amanda Gabashe, in February and April respectively, and then the CEO position has been advertised, and I think if there's any information, Lizo can talk to that. Chair, I think just listening to the media, looking at and chatting to a number of private sector and public sector companies in the last 2 weeks or so, I think the impact of COVID-19 is still going to be felt for many months to come. So particularly for SABS, where we have got a large number of our customers actually are SMMEs. And this is where we see this in our revenue generation, our cash collection figures. Typically, we'd in a good month, we'd collect about 55 million. I think in April, we collected 17 million, May, slightly better of 29 million. But I think, Chair, our predictions in terms of the trend is that it's going to be very constrained going forward. We've been getting quite a number of requests from companies for payment holidays, and I think given our financial situation, that's something that we're trying to work on a case-by-case basis. So 30% of our income comes from the government grant, and we generate 70% of our own income. The targets, as outlined in our corporate plan, we don't think that that's going to be achieved. We are anticipating 100 million rand shortfall. We've been getting a number of customer cancellations. We are anticipating a lot more because a lot of the companies that we're dealing with, as I indicated, are SMMEs who themselves are facing financial constraints. We've noted significant new sales not coming in. And then I think the impact of COVID-19 on a number of industries. I think the important thing to note is that the work that SABS does is voluntary. It's not compulsory compliance, it's voluntary compliance. So customers themselves would understand the need to test, to certify either product or management systems, and it's a voluntary process because they recognize it helps make their product more competitive. Chair, so what we've been doing is we've been re-looking at our corporate plan to look at 2 areas. One is how can we save costs, how can we cut costs, and how can we generate revenue? And that's basically the theme of our focus right now. Chair, the need for the turnaround strategy, I think, has just been compounded by the fact that SABS is a fairly complex business. We have standards and standards development. We certify both products and we certify management systems. So all of the ISO management systems, we would certify that, and we also test in comparison with a number of other national standards bodies who just put out standards. So, Chair, I think In the short term, the focus has been, I think, as Thandi has indicated, stabilize SABS. We're busy in the medium term with fixing the business. I must also indicate, Chair and honourable members, that there's no magic elixir. It's not a silver bullet. It requires a very deliberate set of sequential steps that we have to take to fix the business, and then at the same time working on charting a new course. Chair, I think this is just unpacking the three-pronged approach to our turnaround plan. And then what we're wanting to achieve is make sure that our standards, our national standards, are aligned to government's industrialization efforts. We also want to provide internationally recognized conformity assessment services that continue to support the needs of South African companies, understanding that they are competing in a very fast-paced global economy, and then also build a capable and an efficient SABS. In terms of charting a new course, Chair, we have appointed an external service provider to assist us in developing the appropriate organizational model and structure. We're anticipating that by the end of July, we would have all of these in place. Some of the key outcomes is that we're wanting to develop a fit-for-purpose SABS operating model. We've also have started reviewing the SABS business value chain, looking at where there are bottlenecks, duplication, or even recognizing areas of specialization and efficiency. So lots of work has gone into looking at business processes, mapping those, and then also making sure that there's authority and responsibility that's been appropriately devolved at the right level. Previous to, I think, the SABS being placed under administration, a lot of the authority was vested in a few individuals, and so we've been able to change that by introducing a revised delegation of authority. Chair, I've spoken about this. We're also wanting to implement a workforce plan, and then coupled with this, I think there's a change management and a communication, and also a very strong focus on capability and skills transfer for the colleagues within the organization. I'm going to move on to fixing the business, and this section is going to look at each of the areas separately. In terms of the standards division, what did we set out to fix? We wanted to realign the work to be a lot closer to government's industrialization policy. There's been a need to improve our stakeholder engagement, and then also to support the work on the continent in terms of the AFCFTA. In terms of operational efficiencies, we've introduced a number of ICT tools. We are looking at introducing further ones. There's been quite a lot of work on the technical committee structures and how they participate. We've been able to move fairly seamlessly, Chair, into the virtual space for the committee structures and participation. However, I think there have been some issues with getting a quorum, as well as connectivity issues that we're currently trying to assist there. And then it's looking at how we actually improve how we manage projects. Chair, I'm just going to go into some of these. In terms of the engagement plan, we've identified a number of key standards that we would like to take to market, to government departments across all three tiers. It's the various SANs around anti-bribery management, asset management, the business continuity management, facilities management, responsible tourism, railway safety management systems, and health, the health SANs. Chair, we've also been engaging with a number of regulators to reference our national standards as a way in which we can achieve a number of our regulatory objectives. We've also developed a standards roadmap for two sectors, agro-processing and 4IR, that we're currently reviewing internally. But the idea is that we would roll this out on a sector-by-sector basis. In terms of the AFCFTA, Chair, we've developed a framework, and we are busy consulting with the DTIC just in terms of how we can assist and support efforts on the continent. In terms of the standards development process, we set a target for 497 days. The average has been around 412 days, but we do recognize that there is further room to improve that. Chair, I think the Standards Division is also using a number of the ICT solutions that have been hosted by ISO, and these are assisting us to roll out a number of key initiatives. The work in terms of improving our standards development process, we are wanting to upgrade, and I'd indicated we're wanting to use a blended approach, some face-to-face and some virtual meetings, to ensure that the work still continues. And then we are looking at an e-commerce platform to publish for standards publications. Moving then on to certification, we've spent a lot of time focusing on is improving operational efficiencies. I think, Chair, there's been a number of silos within SABS, and I think the role that the administrators have been performing is how do we actually integrate this. So certification has come up with a new operating model. We call that C4, and it's basically looking at a one SABS approach. We tested this very recently with the RVA audit. We're not quite there where we want to be, Chair, but I think we have improved greatly in terms of making sure that there's accountability and responsibility at all levels within the organization. We've also been able to get approval from National Treasury to utilize a system that we bought last year to use in the certification area, and we're anticipating that by the end of October that we would have an automated process. We've been able to define the end-to-end certification process. It's been completed, and I think that's also been used to refine the ICT system that we've procured. We've established a forum, Chair, with laboratories, sales, marketing, procurement. It meets on a weekly basis to make sure that we're then cementing this integrated approach. I mentioned very briefly earlier that we have the accreditation from RVA, which is the Dutch accreditation. They conducted assessment in May, and we had there was one major finding, and we heard yesterday that they've accepted the proposal, and they will obviously be reviewing that. So that's been some really great news for us. There are 9 other minor findings, Chair, and there are plans in place for us to respond to those very shortly, and it's also looking at how we go and fix up key processes within SABS. But I think just to reinforce, it's the many SABS to the one SABS approach. It's not yet complete, but I think we've started that journey and we're gaining traction. Chair, I'm not going to go into this. I think I just the other areas of non-conformance just relate to data sources, inadequate training on ICT tools, and so all of these plans are in place. We've allocated individuals, and there are timelines to that. But if anybody needs further information, Katima has that information at hand. Chair, then some of the other areas that we've been working on, obviously it's taking the people with us as we undertake this journey and making sure that people are part of the solution going forward. We've rolled out a new performance management process and system. And so the idea is also to look at these group KPIs and then making sure that the golden thread right through to the individual KPIs is captured in performance contracts. Chair, I think some of the lessons that we've learned from the RVA accreditation, I think they performed a virtual audit. And so I think a lot of those lessons in terms of how they've conducted the audit is particularly applicable to the certification area. And we've also picked up the need for a number of SABS-wide policies and instructions, sort of standard operating procedures, but that they're SABS-wide and not just certification standards. So it's making sure that we try and get the integration and manage the silo approach a lot more efficiently. Revenue generation activities, Chair, we've spent some time training the colleagues, the auditors. We've trained 30 in the first phase of the program, and the idea is to train all of our auditors on local content verification. We've been able to support consignment, do consignment inspections on a number of products to the rest of Africa. And we've also been able to do that through partnerships. We've re-established networks with the Namibian standards body, and they've asked us to assist to test South African products made by South African companies in South Africa that are exported into Namibia, and we've got a similar arrangement with Botswana. So there's a very strong focus in establishing regional partnerships to see how we can best support, particularly I think as a first step with PPE related to COVID-19, but then also looking at other products. Chair, moving on to laboratories, there's been an upgrade and a refurbishment of a number of our laboratories. I think we've identified about 13 critical laboratories. We've refurbished 4, and that the 3 laboratories still need to be have been identified for refurbishment, and this is the pump test, the condom lab, and the plumbing lab. Chair, the rest of the slide talks to the infrastructure spend, the investment that we'd like to make in a number of labs, and it's about 11.6 million for the 2020, and we've already also committed 40 million as at the 31st of March 2020. Chair, the improvement in our lab conditions has also been a key focus. I'll talk more about that a bit later when I get to the finance slide. In terms of the facilities, we've upgraded a number of key elements or components in the plant room. There is still ongoing work that has to be done, and we've set out a 3-year plan to do that. In terms of the cement lab, Chair, we've been able to get improved testing conditions with the introduction of a new HVAC system. We haven't yet eliminated the backlog as new equipment must still be delivered, but there are plans in place to drastically reduce that. Lungelo can come in a bit later if there are further questions. Chair, then the set-top box laboratory, we've had an engagement with the Department of Communications in terms of how we take this matter forward, and we are just awaiting feedback from the department on a new delivery model. In terms of improving our operational efficiency within the labs, we've achieved a 72% on-time delivery against a target of 80%, so there is still room for improvement. Part of that improvement relates to an upgrade in the LIMS, in Labware LIMS, which is the ICT system from version 6 to version 7, and there are plans in place to roll that out. I think we've also in the process of appointing a project manager just to assist us to project manage this a lot more aggressively. And Chair, so the idea behind the LIMS is that it would assist us to manage our samples a lot better. It's got test reports, templates, it's got the methods already built in and quotation. So this we're anticipating that instead of taking X amount of days for a quotation, maybe 3 days, we'd be able to do it a lot shorter because all of these are on the system. And we've also been able to fill a number of critical vacancies, critical technical vacancies in this space, Chair. I think our graduate placement program has yielded a number of successes. We've appointed 9 graduates, or we've appointed more than 9 graduates, but 9 have been allocated to the laboratory services area. And Chair, I think this has infused the organization with a really great energy. Lungelo has been really instrumental in meeting with these graduates and showcasing, and they actually need to come and showcase on a quarterly basis the work that they've been doing. And I think, Chair, there's a young lady in the paint lab who's really been quite instrumental in commissioning and getting the new equipment that we bought up to speed and running with that. So it's really been a very great initiative. Chair, we've completed an internal assessment of our capacity and capability in the mining and minerals department. And then I think there's some external work that we need to do in conjunction with the DTIC to make sure that we are serving the sector in a way that is consistent with policy objectives. And then we are also wanting to automate this area by bringing in a forecasting and a planning tool. Chair, there have been a number of backlogs. Due to the lockdown, these backlogs have increased. We are still challenged currently because staff are working on a rotation basis, just in terms of adhering to COVID regulations. So that has exacerbated a number of backlogs. There are action plans that have been implemented to address those. So for instance, in the cement lab, by the end of June, we need to have managed 60% of that backlog down. And we are hoping that by the middle of August, we would have completed all of those backlogs. Chair, I won't go into any of that in further detail, but we are able to take questions in that regard. Those were the cost-cutting initiatives. Moving then on to the revenue-generating activities, we've been able to put together a different kind of a partnership with a large company in the pump industry. The idea is that they would supply the equipment and we would then test, and we would also be able to then test for a number of other companies within the sector. So I think that's going to bring in fairly significant revenue. At Netfer, Chair, there are various opportunities for us to test medium to high voltage transformers. We are exploring those. We are also looking at the testing of cold storage products. And in the radiation protection, we've been able to secure 60 million over the next 3 years as a potential revenue stream by just upgrading that the radiation protection equipment. We've been able to test PPE. We're not able to test all of the PPE. Yesterday, I think we approved the process to start getting in equipment to test ventilators, and that's in partnership with the CSIR. We're also looking at a sector-focused sales approach. So instead of just going out of various companies, we are targeting key sectors to see how we can maximize revenue generation from that. Chair, the training academy, we are wanting to move into a digital learning space. And we've started the process to bring in a digital learning management system. We are doing one-day training courses using virtual platforms, and I think we're looking at seeing what other training, the sort of longer 3, 4, 5-day training courses we can actually move into the virtual space. And Chair, one of the new services that we are looking at is advisory and consulting portfolio services to SMMEs. So instead of just focusing on a product, we can then look at an entire suite of services, from standards to testing to certification. So I think that's quite an interesting area that we're busy exploring as a new advisory services. Chair, in terms of the cross-functional areas, finance, human capital, and marketing, the financial position of SABS, I think, is constrained, and I think I'd indicated earlier, it's exacerbated, I think, by the decline in economic activity linked to COVID. But what we are doing is we are assessing that very regularly on a monthly basis. Where are we, and how do we need to change course? In terms of the 2018-2019 audit findings, Chair, I think we've made progress. We've closed those, and internal audit has also tested those. Chair, this is the capital expenditure that we've, it's totaled 43 million, and we've got planned capex in terms of laboratories, services, our facilities, a certification system, training solutions. And so the idea is, Chair, that we'd really look at bringing in a lot more systems, a lot more automation, digitization into the organization. I'd mentioned earlier, Chair, that the plant room upgrade is in progress, and we are in the process of installing a building management system that would be able to track lab conditions automatically across all of our labs. We've implemented a new pricing strategy, And we are currently engaged in a long-term property development plan. I think one of the things that COVID-19 has taught us is that as SABS, we have a massive asset in terms of land and buildings. How do we actually maximize that? And that's the process that we are currently embarking on. In procurement, we've been able to make a number of efficiency improvements in terms of turnaround times, and in terms of our security, we've been able to also complete and implement a new security strategy. Human Capital Chair made a number of improvements in this space. As part of the organizational review project, we've implemented a culture survey, and I think the results of those are being consolidated as we speak, and we'd be able to look and see just in terms of how people are feeling, how they're engaging with the organization, and where we can actually improve. Staff profiles, we've reviewed and implemented and filled a number of critical vacancies. And so the total number of graduates that we've appointed is 28, and these have been reallocated across the organization. Policies coming out of the RVA audit as well, we've been able to implement a policy review committee, which is chaired by the Executive Human Capital, and we've been able to review a number of policies. We've also launched an online health, safety and environmental training portal for all of the colleagues at SABS. This hasn't really taken off in the way that we'd like, and so there are continuous awareness raising initiatives that are in place to make sure that while people are at home, they are also using this time to upskill themselves. Chair, in terms of marketing, I'm not going to go through this. I think we've spent quite a bit of time and energy looking at digital marketing, how we can improve. We're looking at organizing a standards webinar, which is the first of many, and we're seeing how we can look at using our social media platforms a lot more effectively than we have in the past. Chair, I think I'm out of time, but the next few slides are just in terms of supporting national COVID-19 efforts. I'll be guided by you, Chair, if I should be going through this or if I should just stop here and we can take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Well, we do circulate the report, and obviously members have been able to go through that. Can we then take questions? Secretary, there's an echo on the what's the problem? But I would ask that we then allow the committee members to actually make comments and ask questions for clarity. Can I then actually request the Secretariat? I'm sure members would indicate. Yes.
Mr. Thring.
Honorable Thring.
Mr. Thring, followed by Ms. Yaku.
Yaku. Thring, Honorable Thring, and then Honorable Yaku. In that order.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair, let me go straight into my question so I don't eat into too much of my time. To Mrs. Scholes, have you identified duplications with other regulatory bodies in terms of what SABS does? And if yes, what are these duplications? And what do you recommend to be done to remove unnecessary duplication? Secondly, in the light of declining revenue collection and failure to reach your financial targets, what interventions are there to actually turn this around? Then what is the progress on the e-commerce platforms and the upgrading from manual documentation to ICT digitization of SABS across all of its departments? And this also includes the plans to upskill staff, particularly in the ICT sector. If you could also just give me the percentage of laboratories that are dysfunctional or not in use, what percentages of the labs have been upgraded, and what percentage of the laboratories are actually operational? And then what are your ideas? You mentioned the utilization of land and buildings that are not in use. Could we hear what are the ideas in terms of how these non-utilized parcels of land or buildings are going to be used? And then lastly, what are the gaps, discrepancies identified by the Auditor General that have been actually closed so that there's no repetition? And what consequence management was exercised for those against those who failed to exercise fiduciary responsibility at SABS? Thank you, Chair.
Yako, Honorable Yako.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question is basically also in line with what Honorable Thring was asking. The first one is with the sales not generating, it's not as if are not utilizing material or utilizing products. So who is the main competition of the SABS, and how is the department assisting you in making sure that you close that gap? You also mentioned an external service provider which you've hired who's assisting you on your operational model and recreating it. Can you name that external service provider for us, please? And lastly, realistically, how long do you think it will take the SABS to fix its business, in inverted commas, or to turn itself around? I'm talking realistically now in the term of this term of us being in Parliament. Can you be honest and say we believe it will take 10 years, 15 years, 5 years for us to get out of being an administration and also getting us on back on track? Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mulder, followed by Mr. McPherson, Chair.
Honorable Mulder, followed by McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. I will stick to just only one question. A lot of questions has already been asked and covered. As far as cash flow and income is concerned, regarding or taking into account the unfortunate recent history of the SABS and the fact that it's been placed under administration and the COVID-19 situation, and also taking into account the adjusted budget that we are expecting later today, this will most certainly influence the flow of money towards the SABS. My question is, will we soon see a new turnaround plan, taking this new circumstances into account? I think it's very important, urgent in this circumstances that we should see a new adapted turnaround plan, taking the new circumstances into account. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Honorable McPherson.
Thank you very much. Ms. Scholz, the last time we were there, obviously the SABS was a very different place and was in a very different time. And when we were there, Mr. Strachan was talking about a reimagined SABS, a SABS that sort of became streamlined and focused on what its competitive advantages were. And at the time, he categorically pointed out and painted a picture for us that unless the SABS was to do that, it would not be able to function. It was burning through cash. It was at that point, in talks to look for extra funding. Now, all of that has changed. And I suspect that the cash burn has in fact actually ramped up. So can you please confirm that? You now have said that you will not be able to get any funding. So, I mean, that leaves SABS now with only two options. The first option is that it streamlines itself and only focuses on what the market cannot do. It is pointless for SABS to try and compete in the market. Or two, it will become bankrupt. Those are the only two options available to it. And bankruptcy is becoming more of a realistic option for the SABS as far as I can see it. Now, if Mr. Strachan was a believer in the reimagined SABS, was the reason that he resigned because he couldn't find support in the DTI and from yourself in that reimagined SABS? And if yourself and the DTI does not support that reimagined SABS, do you then agree that bankruptcy is the only option for SABS? Thank you.
Okay, are there any further names?
Chair. Ms.
Yes,
Mutahung, followed by Mr. Mbuyani, Chair.
Butaung.
Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity. I have only 3 questions. My first question will be, who's responsible for the inspection of the sanitizers that are not tested? The second one will be, how do you make sure that consumers become certain that facial masks are certified by SABS? The third question will be, how far are you with the local content? Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Can you take Mboyane?
Chairperson. Good. Yes. Good morning, Chairperson. How are you?
Yeah. All right, sir.
I'm well. Thank you for the opportunity, Chairperson. I just have some few clarity-seeking questions from SABS. We'll first welcome the presentation by Ms. Cox, and we also wanted some few clarity around the poor policy decision that were initially taken, like cancellation of permits. How far are they? And also the plan to resuscitate the financial crisis of SABS. Do we have any strategy with it? And also there were some aging infrastructure with the SABS, even the marketing, the signage, the sign of SABS were rotten the last time we visited there. And also the cancellation of the 300 million digitization plan in favor of the cost-effective. How far are we in terms of dealing with the turnaround strategy? Chairperson, the revenue generation on Ethiopian company, can we be briefed as to what is happening there? Maybe the last one I will pause there, Chairperson, in terms of the organizational structure, the skills audit versus the organizational design. How far are we winning? Because the last time we checked, there were executives that were resigned, reduced to 5. Just we need the information as to how are the things happening there. Chairperson, the continuous meeting with the labor almost every week, we just want to check, are they part of the turnaround strategy? Because the last time we were there, we were told that they meet labor every week. They've resuscitated a program with labor that sticks to deal with the issues of not understanding each other. Maybe the one of local content has been taken care by the Comrade Mutaung. No, I think I'll pause there for now, Chairperson. Maybe the recruitment challenge will have briefings around there. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Mantashe, followed by Ms. Muatse, Chair.
Mantashe and Muatse.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sorry today I'm challenged with network. I get cut off all the time, but I just want to inquire from Jody. He says they're going to deal with the backlog by the end of June. I'm not sure if she understands that end of June is just around the corner. And what strategy does she have to ensure that that backlog has been addressed? Chair, I also want to check, when we were there on oversight, the workers were up in arms. How did they deal with that? Can we be assured that going forward, there will be no other misunderstandings with labor? I know labor keeps on shifting goals, but the things they were raising in that action was that management does not keep promises. Have they improved on that? My other questions, Chair, have been covered by other speakers. Thank you so much.
Okay. Motse?
Chair, it would appear Ms. Muatse having problems to connect, Chair.
Okay. She can use the chat and then you can actually pick that up if possible. I'm not sure if there are any further members wanting to ask questions now. Nothing? Okay.
No, Chair.
All right. Can you then allow me to actually ask our lead administrator, Ms. Scholes, and the team? I'm sure DDG Pele would be able to actually guide us as well. on how we can actually manage process in response to questions and comments by members. DDG?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Can I request that probably the lead administrator assist in this regard, because you would have a better sense of who are the members from her team who will be able to take the different questions.
Okay.
Let's provide the opportunity to SABS to respond first. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Lead administrator, Ms. Scholz.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honourable members. I'm going to ask Lungelo if you are able to just touch on the labs and the backlogs and just where we are. In response to Honourable Mantashe's question, Lizo, can you deal with the labour issues, the questions around labour, and I think there were some others around HR. And then, just in terms of the org review, where are we, and what is the plan? The Honourable Yaku, the name of the external service provider is for Chakras, but Lizo can talk to that. Tina, can you maybe just talk to some of the long-term property development strategy, some of the plans that we have in place, and then I'll pick up, and the AG gaps. As I understand it, we've plugged all of the 2018-19 gaps, but perhaps if you could talk about 19-20 and where we are with that. Chair, and then I will just come in at the end. Katima, I don't know if there's, if you also want to just come in on the local content and where we are with that. I'll hand over to the team, Chair, and then I'll come in. Thank you.
Okay. All right, the team.
Thank you, Chair. It's Lungelo here, if I can start.
Lungelo.
Thanks.
Lungelo,
Can I go ahead?
switch off your video because your voice is a bit difficult. You can switch off your video. Yes. Try that.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to respond
Chair,
to
Chair, there's a bit of background noise. Can we ask all members to switch off their mics, please? There's somebody whose mic is on with a lot of background noise.
Oh, okay. Can you just check, Secretary, the muting of those who are not talking? Lungelo, you're on the floor. Yes, Lungelo.
Okay. Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity to respond to the questions that have been raised by various honorable members. I've captured a number of them, and then I'll address them. And if I miss any question, then during the second round of questions, I might attempt to address that. There were a number of questions that we asked with regards to which labs we have improved, which ones we have upgraded, and which ones are dysfunctional, which ones are not in use. I'll start with the labs that are not in use. The usage of the labs depends on the samples that are being submitted in the various labs. So from time to time, there will be labs that are not necessarily operational, not because they are dysfunctional, but because the fact that the samples that they are anticipating those labs are very low. So they will process those labs and run with those labs. So currently, all of the labs are working in the sense that they are clearing the backlog and trying to improve all the work that we have not catched up because of the COVID-19 challenges. Of course, we are balancing clearing that backlog at the same time, the safety of employees. So it's a balancing act. We're trying to make sure that whilst we are clearing the backlog, but we're also not compromising their safety. So these labs are running on a rotational basis. That means that some people come through, some of them are working from home, those who can work from home, and then the following week, then the next group of people will come in. In terms of labs that are dysfunctional, I will not call that labs are dysfunctional. I will say that the various labs within SABS all have challenges. And these challenges pertain to two things. One is the capacity. Capacity in the sense that you will have labs that are using old technology where they have capabilities to test, but they do not necessarily have enough of the same equipment to be able to process more. The second one is also linked with capabilities, both from a HR point of view and also from an equipment point of view. From an equipment point of view, we are working in terms of the allocation that is being allocated to us for CAPEX to close this gap. But Chair and honorable members, it's a journey that we need to embark on, because currently with the capex that we have, or the equipment that we have, 50% of the equipment that we have, it's more than the 10-year lifespan of equipment. But most of it is still dysfunctional. But the fact that it's more than 10 years of the life cycle presents some challenges, and more so when it comes to interfacing with the certain technologies. So it's a journey that we are embarking on, and we are making progress, but we would like the process to be expedited so that we can do so. And that only depends on what the organization can afford, what the shareholder can be able to release that, and in this constraint, that will remain a challenge. In terms of the labs that we have improved, there are in total of 29 labs. Two of which of those labs are mainly based on the sites in terms of the mines, but the rest of the labs are located in the various areas. What we have done is that we identified 13 labs out of these 29. And the procedure that we followed was we looked at where the labs that found efficiency improvement in terms of reducing the cost to income for those labs, and also where are the labs where there's an opportunity to grow more, either in terms of new revenue streams or maintaining these labs, and we categorize it to 13. Of the 13 now, you'll recall that before the honorable members visit in Feb, we had 4 that we had prioritized. That has been completed. And then we identified additional 5, of which that additional 5, 4 already has been completed. And then 1 we're just busy now with some minor challenges, not challenges, but minor repairs that we need to sort out so that we can hand it over. We will then look at doing the balance of the 13, but it's something that we are also balancing the cash flow of the organization and also at the same time the revenue generating opportunities in those labs and the value that SABS can generate from those labs. So it's a balancing act, but we are working towards that area. In terms of the strategy to backlog, to reduce the backlog, I'll be the first one to admit that the issue of backlog is there's a legacy part, and then there's also constraint by the COVID-19. The legacy part is underpinned by 2 issues. One related to the equipment that I've touched to already, but also the operational management capabilities. These capabilities have really declined over the time. And as a result, the focus in terms of how do we then make sure that we manage the business and be able to deliver these things. What we have done currently is that we looked at doing planning, and this planning is done using an Excel-based tool, but we are finalizing the process of having a forecasting and planning tool that can be utilized so that we can see the samples from the time that they come in, there's various stages that are in the system, and also when to deliver. But also at the same time, be able to see the demand, because we've got what we call contracted business, which is certification, and we've got working clients. And currently, we don't have the capabilities to see what is coming to us, except the fact that you might find that there's a sample at the pavilion, and we need to respond to that. That then affects the scheduling capabilities, because that capability depends on the constraints being whether we've got people on board, we've got equipment available, we've got the right consumables, and the conditions that we can run and then run it. So we are hoping that the automated tool that we'll use will then improve those capabilities. Then we can see that. But over and above that, this is one of the things that we're hoping that once the org review is completed, it will give us an opportunity to then say, how can we streamline the division such that we've got a lean, operational efficient organization, and where there are gaps, we can then say, how do we then repurpose the people that are there so that we can close those gaps with the view that it's an organization or it's a division that then can serve the needs of the client. I'll touch then briefly on the revenue generating on Ethiopian company. I'm not quite sure whether it's with regards to the tender that we've submitted there. We did submit the tender to the Ethiopian company with regards to a number of initiatives, but more about capacity building in that particular space. It closed sometime in May. We did receive acknowledgement that they've received it, but of course they are going through a procurement process, and the outcome of the procurement process has not yet been communicated to us. Once it's communicated, we are more than willing to share that information to the members at an appropriate time. I think those were some of the things that were raised in my space, unless I've missed something, but over to you, Chair and Jody.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Lungelo. Lizo, do you want to come in now?
Okay, thank you very much, Jody. Once again, good morning, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. I'm going to respond to the HR-related questions, starting with the one from Honorable Yako on the name of the service provider that is assisting SABS with the organizational review process. The name of the service provider is For Chakras Consulting. For Chakras Consulting is a organizational design consultancy that has been around for some time, very much experience in this space, and then they play within the public service as well as private sector. They've assisted a lot of state-owned entities as well as private owned companies when it comes to the organizational review processes. Then going forward to another question from Honorable Mviane regarding the org review, the org structure, executives and all that. The number of executives currently, there are only 3 permanent executives at SABS from 7 executives. So as Jody alluded earlier on, that we've decided deliberately not to fill the positions as the other executives left, purely because of the process that now we have undertaken, the one of the organizational review, because what you are looking at achieving there is a flatter structure, a SABS with a flat structure, a lean organization. As we all know that SABS has been struggling with cost, particularly when it comes to the salary bill, the labor cost has been too high. So now we're hoping, in fact, we want to see a situation post this org review, a SABS that is much leaner with a very much flatter structure. So which a few number of executive positions. With regard to labor and the involvement, yes, we have, since the turnaround strategy in 2018, we tried by all means to improve the relationship with labor. We introduced the worker participation, where we involve them in almost everything that we do, especially that involves workers. So as you know, the turnaround strategy itself is about the entire organization, so labor has to be part of it. So on a regular basis, even with the acting CEO at the time, you know, we used to have those meetings that are still continuing with the lead administrator, where labor gets updated of what's happening, and then we take their input. We get them to know exactly where the organization is. That is insofar as the financial position, the initiatives that we are taking in terms of trying to turn the organization around, and all those strategic, you know, interventions that the organization is driving. So labor is very much part of that. So there's nothing that they don't know what is happening within the organization. And so that is even over and above your statutory meetings that are taking place on a monthly basis, you know, in terms of your recognition agreement. So just to make sure that they are part of what's happening. Then I think the last one is on labor relations, environment, or the climate itself. The honourable member spoke about the strike that happened at the time when they were there. The strike, just to remind the honourable members, the strike itself was a DTI entities strike. It was not necessarily a SABS strike. So the issues that the employees were fighting for were not necessarily SABS issues, but they were the 13 entities at the time. The issues that were applicable to all the different entities. So that strike obviously came to an end, and DTI got involved. and then we ended up signing an agreement, to resolve the strike. So that was resolved basically in a nutshell. So now we are looking at the new issues. So the negotiations have not started yet. So we will then deal with it when it starts. So thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thanks, Lizo. Honourable Yako, I think in response to your question, how long will it take to fix the business, and how long will it take to get out of administration? I think the administration part resides with the DTIC, but in terms of our projections to get out of administration, we've got a timeline of 2 years. Tina, do you just want to come in on the land and buildings, the gaps identified by the AG, please?
Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Chair. Honourable Thring, in response to your questions related to the audit findings, as Jody mentioned, we've managed to close all audit findings. A lot of the findings that were raised in the prior financial year were technical audit findings that arose from system inefficiencies and our manual processes. So we've managed to implement controls to address those findings. We've also introduced a whole range of exception reports that will help us identify these issues beforehand so we can proactively address them. We've, in addition to that, we've asked internal audit to review the findings that we have addressed, and they're quite comfortable with that. We've also asked the Auditor General to look at the findings as part of their interim audit, and on the issues that they've audited so far, there's been no additional issues raised. So I think we're fairly confident that we've managed to address all of these findings. And we continue to monitor each of these technical accounting issues as they arise and new standards come into play. In terms of the property development strategy, I think the long-term property development strategy will focus on how do we leverage the space that we have available across all SABS offices and utilize that space more efficiently to generate rental income. With the COVID-19 and the remote working, we've seen that we don't need a full staff complement at the offices. So we're going to try and leverage that and look for opportunities to boost our income via rental income. Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Chair.
Okay.
Katima, do you just want to come in on the local content, and then maybe immediately after that, Sadvir, on the interactions with the regulatory bodies and the duplications?
Thank you, Jody, and thank you, Honourable Chair. I think maybe before I touch on local content, also there was a question from Honourable Thring in relation to possible duplication of some of the activities we may be performing. And I think one case in point, it could be around consignment inspection work that we do, but not necessarily duplication with other entities per se. As we know that, Chair, inspections, market surveillance inspection work, it's within the purview of what NRCS does. But often where we come in conducting these consignment inspections, it's more a complementary role. But it's information we'll share from time to time with colleagues at the NRCS and possibly with other regulators. So SABS' mandate is not to perform any market surveillance work, but predominantly will perform consignment inspections in areas that are not necessarily in the mandate of other entities. Furthermore, there was also a question, Chair, from Honourable Yako around who are the main competition. And predominantly in the certification space, the competitors that we are aware of, it's mainly multinational companies who are big in most parts of the world, Europe, Asia, and most parts of the continent, and the likes of SGS, Bureau Veritas, TUV, and so on. So these are the people whom we are in competition with on a bigger scale. So furthermore, Chair, and on there was also a question from Honourable Mbuyani on clarification of cancellation of policies that led to a number of cancellations and stuff like that. And one case in point was the famous stopping of partial testing at the time that also impacted on most of our activities, issuing test reports on time, permits on product certification, and certificates for management system. And that eventually that has since been reversed, and now it's been implemented under customer-specific requirements. So that on its own has sort of addressed the concern that was there in the past. Furthermore, Chair, also to what Jody is requesting me to comment to, which is also a question from Honorable Mutau on inspections of sanitizers and facial masks and so on. I think the committee will be aware that SABS is not a regulator, therefore, again, issues of inspections on sanitizers, it's not necessarily the mandate of SABS to randomly go out and perform market surveillance inspections, unless if there is a specific need. Where is one of the companies that we have certified under product certification and they have an SABS mark, so therefore that specific company can be inspected, or there is an abuse of an SABS mark where somebody or a company has affixed a SABS mark illegally, that may warrant us to investigate that specific issue. Insofar as to whether market surveillance is taking place on inspections or sanitizers, maybe the colleagues at the NRCS may expand on that. We learned that maybe there was an initiative to introduce a regulation in that regard, but I'm not aware as to how far that initiative has went. So the facial masks, again, Chair, for some of them that we have certified, such as N95 and so on, we have limitations in terms of ensuring compliance with those. What do I mean is we only focus on products that we have certified where companies have applied specifically for SABS mark. So coming back to the issue of local content, Chair, local content verification as we know it. Where we are to date, the ministry, in this case DTIC, in the past has made funds available to SABS to execute local content verification, and this is limited to designated sectors. And how the process works, our colleagues at Proudly SA handle the monitoring of tenders that are all published from all spheres of government in line with triple PFA regulations. And that entire data collection will be shared with the colleagues at the ministry, DTIC, under the directorate of Dr. Tebogo Makube. So selected tenders will then be brought to us, Chair, for us to be able to perform local content verification. And majority of those thus far has been limited on furnitures and textile industries and few other areas. So of course, that on its own, as we all know, that the biggest challenge has always been who should be responsible for payment of local content verification. The funding around it has always been an issue, although the ministry has made an allocation, even including in this current financial year we're in, there was an allocation that has been made by the department so that some limited verifications can be executed in that regard. However, as we know that reported in the past in relation to local content verification, there is also another component under the mining charter where the Department of Mineral Resources at the time requested that SABS also play a role in providing this local content verification in the mining industry for all the suppliers who will be supplying the mines, because the mines have been requested that 70% of their spend in line with the mining charter should be limited to, should have local content in it, and therefore, as part of their scorecard that they're expected to submit to DMR at the time, even now, it will have to demonstrate that there is local content that has taken place, and of course, a certificate from SABS confirming that we have conducted these verifications will be useful. So since that regulation, Chair, companies, the mines were given a two-year, two-window period for self-declaration. Intention for that, for companies to prepare for all of this, and that window period is coming to an end by end of September this year, this financial year. We're hoping that an uptake will then take place from October onwards in terms of us now starting to perform these verifications. You heard in the presentation earlier on from Jody, where she outlined the initiatives we are putting in place in bolstering capacity in this area to make sure that we utilize the existing auditor pool that is in our possession so that we have enough resources to be able to respond to the possible demand that may lie ahead. Thank you very much.
Sadhvir?
Thank you, Jody, and thank you, Chair. So I'm going to be very brief because my colleagues have captured the essence of the questions and responded accordingly. Specifically on the duplications from a regulatory perspective, I think I'm going to speak from a standards perspective because regulators out there, and there's probably in excess of 300 regulators in South Africa. There is no holistic regulatory framework that draws on a central regulatory portfolio from a national perspective. And that's where we get high disparities and probably scope creep in terms of regulations, in terms of regulating products and services in the country as well. So good regulatory practice should be based on national standards. SABS is the national standards body. It is the only entity mandated to develop South African national standards. And we go through international best practice, stakeholder engagement to develop these national standards. Regulators should be using our documents, our knowledge, our solutions in terms of our national standards, reference our solutions and to achieve a regulatory or policy objective. A very clear example of that is the NRCS. NRCS was formerly part of the SABS, and that's why we have this very good relationship with NRCS in terms of all their regulations, administration of their regulations, references South African national standards. So we don't have a reinvention of the wheel in terms of technical solutions. However, we might not have a national standard available for a product or a service to be regulated, and the regulator can, on his own, go out and identify a particular solution in the regulatory environment. To date, there are more than 1,100 national standards that are referenced in all three tiers of government. So referencing standard in a regulation is one thing, enforcing that standard is something else. So it's up to the regulators to make sure that they do for consumer protection and to achieve their objectives as well in terms of market failures. So we have proactively put together a stakeholder engagement plan, which is a government stakeholder engagement plan, together with bringing in the SOEs and regulators. We are identifying the various objectives, policy objectives of government departments and regulators. We are putting together a matrix of the national standards that are aligned towards those objectives and policy objectives, and we're going to strategically engage with the priority government departments and regulators to make sure that they start using South African national standards to achieve a regulatory objective. Just to point out, over the recent months regarding regulatory duplications, we've noticed this in terms of the medical devices. So the Department of Health has a standards department or a division that develops regulatory standards for the procurement of medical devices. SABS has technical committees to develop national standards for medical devices. So there is an element of duplication in terms of a central procurement of procuring PPE historically, which may not be South African national standards. It could be other standards which the Department of Health, SAPRA/SAPRA, may be looking at in terms of procurement of PPE. And certainly it's not good and best regulatory practices in terms of going out of South African national standards and procuring on other standards that are available out in the marketplace. Chair, thank you for the opportunity. Those are a few comments regarding the items addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, if I can just quickly take the last few questions. Honourable Thring, in response to your question about consequence management, we've issued warnings, we've also looked at corrective counselling in terms of training. So anybody who's incurred irregular expenditure, there have been meetings, warnings issued, and corrective training has been put in place. Honourable Yako, in terms of how the department is assisting us in terms of sales, through DDG Pele's office and the Office of the Chief Economist, there's a process in place for us to convene a meeting with all of the technical infrastructure institutions to look at critical sectors that the DTIC is focused on, and that's I think is an important policy direction for us at SABS particularly. Honourable McPherson, in terms of your question, we are, I think Lizo has indicated, we are busy looking at streamlining through the org review. We are looking at functions, making sure that there is no duplication. So for instance, I think in the certification area, the C4 initiative has been to eradicate duplications in that particular division, and the work is ongoing. In terms of the support from the administrators and the DTIC, both Dr. Demana and myself have been co-administrators, I think, since July 2018. And what we are doing is it's been a journey, and we are busy implementing that with the full support of the DTIC. So part of the support that we've received from the DTIC has been assistance in terms of policy guidelines. The CFO has also been assisting from a financial point of view, just helping us to look at the numbers and ensure cash flow projections are correct, and also exploring other revenue generation activities. Internally, we're addressing all of the operational challenges. There's also a strong drive to reduce inefficiencies and also target new revenue generation activities. I think in terms of the Honourable Motahung, your question about the hand sanitizers, where we have received complaints, I've also engaged with the NCC, the Commissioner Tezi Mabuza there, for them to go out and look at any sanitizers that are hitting the market, that consumers are complaining about, that they think is not effective, because the NCC has the mandate to go and conduct an inspection and obtain samples that they can then have tested. Just in terms of the cancellation of the 300 million digitization strategy, Chair and honourable members, we've cancelled the figure of 300 million because that has been something that the SABS cannot afford. What we have done is we've implemented a number of elements related to that. So for instance, the first one is around the certification system, bringing that on board. Looking at the e-learning platforms is another. The rollout of the labs of Limware, Labware LIMS in the laboratories is another. So there are a number of key ICT interventions that we've taken and brought on board. That 300 million figure also had a large change management component in it, and I think only 60 million of that was actual software and some hardware, and the rest was around change management initiatives. So we've unpacked and unbundled that digital flight plan, and to focus on really critical business activities that need to be automated and implemented. Chair, I think those are the outstanding questions. Oh, and then Honourable Mulder, I think your question about will we see a new turnaround plan? Yes, we've already started on that engagement, because I think we realise even for the current corporate strategy that's currently in existence, that needs to be reviewed. So we are looking at a much stronger sector focus with the support from the DTIC in terms of how we can then focus on sectors that are productive, and one of those is looking at opportunities in PPE, particularly also looking at food sectors as well. Chair, I think we've collectively answered all of the questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Can I just say, one would just ask for the opportunity from members to allow us to take the next presentation. I know there might be some detail around certain issues.
Chair.
This is actually a process where we are looking at regular feedback sessions. And I think on my part, yes, Herman.
Before you move to the next presentation, Chair, will you allow me to thank the SABS for the work that they've been doing in implementing the turnaround strategy. And we hope that they will continue to make good progress. And the next time they come and report to us, that they come and put timelines on everything that they report. But I think they must be commended for the good work they've done. Thank you.
Well, obviously, I think one welcomes the comment, Honorable Hermans, but I think from our Secretariat and Research team, we will actually have to make sure that from when we visited up till now, get sense on how we can be able to pick up the main issues to follow up and be able to actually agree on regular feedback sessions. But obviously, we do have as a committee as well our oversight visit, conclusion, and recommendations. And I'm sure we should actually be able to engage further with the entity moving forward. So, honorable members, if you can actually allow me to take the next presentation. Obviously, I think we do have Mr. Edward Mamadise, the CEO, DDG Pele, I'm sure will be able to assist in taking the process forward. Can we take the next presentation? And I'm sure there will be issues we can follow through on comments and questions from members. If we can actually allow that, we take the next presentation. Okay, DDG, I see the presentation being put up. Maybe I can invite you to talk to us. The Chief Executive Officer, Mamadise, I'm sure is there with the team. DDG.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. I think similar to the SABS presentation, we are here with the leadership of NRCS to take the committee through the work that they've been doing around addressing some of the outstanding audit issues that they have encountered with AG, also addressing some of the operational requirements. The team is here, Chair, led by the CEO, Edward Mamadise. We'll give them a platform to take the committee through the presentation.
Date Mamadise, floor is yours. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, honorable members. Chair, I'm not alone. Let me first introduce the team. We have among others Abigail Tulare, the Chief Operating Officer, Mrs. Pezile Magagula, the Chief Financial Officer, Nomathemba Majola, the Acting Chief Information Officer, as well as Edward Mathemba, our Strategy and Risk Manager. Chair, to demonstrate the collectiveness of the leadership and to take collective ownership of the turnaround plan, I will allow the team, with your permission, of course, to also partake in the presentation process. I will start the presentation on slide 6. The need to develop and implement a turnaround plan was informed by the following issues that have been raised by the Auditor General in the last financial year and the previous financial year. Number one, there has been issue with the key critical vacancies in the human resource department and in the organization as a whole. The NRCS has received qualified audit opinion from the AG in the past 6 years. There has been a backlog of LOAs, and lastly, there has been delay with the implementation of the ICT modernization project. That was what informed us to develop a turnaround plan to try and change the situation within the organization. In the last financial year, Chair, the NRCS received lots of audit findings from the Auditor General. Among those audit findings, there were 13 audit findings relating to the ICT environment. Out of the 13, 7 of the findings have been closed and resolved. 5 remain work in progress. The 5 remaining audit findings mainly relate to the JDE system that we have inherited from SABS. As you know, this is an archaic system, a financial system, Chair, that continues to give us challenges. However, we undertook to fix some of the challenges arising of this system. However, we received a quote of about 35 million to fix the archaic system, which led us to then abandon the our vision of fixing the system, to rather concentrate on the bigger picture, the implementation of the modernization project, including the enterprise solution for the organization. There were further 71 audit findings across the organization in finance, human resource, and organizational performance. Of these findings, 53 of the findings have been closed and resolved. 21 of these findings impacted directly on the financial statements. Out of the 21 that impacted on the financial statement, Chair, we are pleased to report to the committee that 19 of those have been resolved and closed, and only 2 remain work in progress. The 2 that remain work in progress is obviously the main qualification aspect relating to completeness of revenue and cutoff. The CFO will be taking us through the issues implemented to resolve that qualification. If I may quickly move to the human resource challenges that I've highlighted, Chair. As I've indicated, Chair, one of the issues that has been troubling the organization is the existence of critical vacant position within the organization, especially in the finance department. I'm pleased to report to the committee again, Chair, that we have filled all critical positions in the finance department, including the head of the supply chain management, the financial manager, and the chief financial officer, albeit on a short contract basis. The position of the chief information officer has been filled through a secondment from CETA. There were other 2 positions, Chair, that have been identified in the legal metrology and research and development departments. The GM legal metrology position, we are in the process of filling that position. We have had shortlisting on the 10th of June. Unfortunately, we were not able to find sufficient suitable candidates to move to the next stage, which is the interview stage. We have therefore decided to embark on a headhunting process where we will appoint a recruitment agency to provide us with a list of CVs that we can look at and determine whether they can be able to move to the next process of interviews and therefore fill the position of the GM legal metrology. The general manager research and development, we deliberately not filling that position, Chair, pending the organizational review process that we are almost finalizing. I've already touched on the position of the Chief Financial Information Officer. We have Chief Financial Information Officer, Chair, who started with us on the 7th of May. Although we have appointed the Chief Financial Officer, this is a contract position pending the finalization of the recruitment of a permanent CFO. Unfortunately, Chair, again in May, we had a resignation from the head of the Human Resource Department. The head of the Human Resource Department was headhunted by one of the entities in government. They gave an offer that she could not refuse and an offer that we could not match. Therefore, she had to leave. And I think what is key, Chair, in any organization, you will always have vacancies. What is key is the speed in which the organization move to close the gaps whenever the vacancies occurs, because people are always in the move. They are always looking for better and greener pastures. Sometimes it is not within our control to the organizational review. We have anticipated to complete the organizational review by the end of March 2020. However, we had to move the date, Chair, due to the lockdown. We are at the advanced stage of finalizing the organizational review. We have scheduled a meeting on Friday, this coming Friday, Chair, where the macro and microstructure of the organization will be presented to the executive. Thereafter, we will make a decision on the adoption of the new structure. The next process, obviously, is to get concurrence of the minister. Our legislation entails that we must consult with the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition when we develop and implement a new structure. We anticipate to finalize this process by end of June, Chair. In terms of the policies that have not been updated for a long time, Chair, we are pleased to report to the committee that we have made traction as well. We have reviewed all the policies, and the policies are at a stage of consultation with the organized labor. If I may move to the next slide, Chair. If you may recall, in the last financial year, there were additional qualification areas pertaining to post-retirement benefit, where the Auditor General raised an issue of limitation of scope. We have made sure, Chair, in this current financial year that situation does not recur. We have proactively finalized the necessary actuarial report in April already. It will form part of the financial statements. The leave management system has been implemented. Where we are in terms of the leave electronic systems, Chair, is just to make sure that we fix the issues of integrity, the accuracy of opening balances and so forth within the leave system to cater for the migration from the manual process to the electronic system. Similarly, with the payroll chair, we have implemented a payroll system that we are being assisted by the SABS. We are at a stage where now we are finalizing the teething problems that emanated from the migration process from the old system to the new system. But everything is under control, Chair. With that, Chair, let me hand over to the CFO, Petsile Makakula. She will take us through the revenue qualification update.
Thank you, CFO. Good morning, Chair, and good morning to all the honourable members.
Morning.
I am going to take you through just this one slide that talks to the revenue qualification update. In the 2 months that I've been here, yes, Chair.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you to put the camera on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In the 2 months that we have since joined the entity and finding out that we had a revenue qualification for the past 6 years was not a comfortable situation to sit in, and finding that there already was a process that was going through in the organization to prepare an estimation methodology. So we set up to immediately also just give input to the estimation methodology to address most of the audit findings, because as you can see, these findings are just a derivative of the revenue recognition and the way that we were accounting for revenue in the entity. So it was very critical for us to sit with business units and really understand the processes that happen around the recognition of revenue and the work that they do in terms of what the Act requires, for us to then understand what the Act requires and then interpret the GRAP statement to talk to the issues that, we haven't been able to address as an organization for the past 6 years. So the revenue qualification update then talks to, the work that has been done around some of the issues that were raised. The first one was the failure to consider all actual declarations. Okay, maybe I should just also say that we've also sat down with the Auditor General this year just to find out why has the organization just gotten so many audit findings. What was quite interesting to note, and probably an easy way for us to be able to continue to attend to the audit this year, was that they concurred with the fact that maybe if management was forthcoming last year to address some of the issues that were raised during the audit, a lot of these audit findings would not have ended up in the management report. So what we have since then decided as a team is that in the next audit, once it starts, the audit steering committee that will talk to the findings as and when they are identified by the auditors, we should be able to address some of these issues and respond to what the auditors want and conclude and clear them before the auditors then decide that it should get into the management report. So hopefully this year, with a tight hand in the audit itself, we're not going to be seeing so many audit findings in this report. So the failure to consider all actual declarations, we have corrected this in this year. We are invoicing utilizing all actual declarations, and there's no blanket estimate done. Looks like last year auditors could pick up that companies have sent declarations, but those declarations were never used to raise the invoices. So we have corrected that. It's currently, even if we have raised estimates, when we get the correct declarations, we send the necessary credit notes, and we only recognize revenue in terms of what we've calculated based on the actual declarations. The levy estimates, there was a big issue around what was done in estimating a 10% across board without a bit of explanation of why 10%. That is where the estimation methodology then came into effect. We have already given our input into the estimation methodology, which now simplifies and makes sure that the estimates that we're doing are actually accurate, a little bit accurate, and a fair estimate of, you know, what we could then recognize as revenue. Because if the estimate themselves are not accurate and fair, then we do not even have a reason in terms of the GRAP standards to actually recognize that revenue. Because if the revenue is not estimated reliably, then it doesn't even, you know, need to be called a revenue, because then you're thumb sucking. So what we're doing in this estimation methodology, we've then said we are only going to be using prior period, recent prior period submitted declarations, and use, you know, an economic growth rate of the organization in terms of what, you know, Stats SA has sent. And we've given this to the auditors general. They've confirmed that they're still working on the document, and they're giving their input as a team, and they're going to come back to us hopefully soon enough for us to be able to then start putting all those adjustments into our financial statements and be ready. And then new customers were not taken into account. It looks like there's always been discrepancies with what business units was doing and what then gets, you know, into the JDE database. What we are currently doing with the business units, we really want JDE to be the only source of information, or the one database that we can all rely on. So there's a major process that we're going through in updating and making sure that we're cleaning up the database of the organization. And we are working on a document which sort of, we're calling it a database maintenance procedure, where we are saying, how are we going to be cleaning up this companies? How are we going to be making companies active or inactive? What procedures should be done by business units, and what should be done by finance to make sure that new customers, customers are maintained in the database, and our revenue are then sent to clients or customers that are actually active, and those that are not active are then, you know, removed from the database timeously. We are working on this, and we've sat with the business units, and we've understood what the issues are. We're continuing to sit and waiting for them to understand what the processes are that they do to show us that some of these companies are still active and are still operating, and then the link into finance and making sure that we timelessly also bring in those new customers into our books, and also those new customers that they found when they did the inspections are brought in also in finance at the right time. So we want just to make sure there's a clean process that doesn't have any breaks in between, so that the completeness of the work that they do then gets brought into the finance in time. And it was clear that there's then this discrepancy or this breakdown between what they do and what gets into finance. Because if there's no clear line, then many things get dropped. They send through emails. Who knows who the email they sent it to, if it's up, you know, if it's implemented by finance or not. So we need to have a cleaner system where these customers are brought in, and we ensure completeness and capturing of those new customers into our databases. And then the last one was around the revenue completion and cutoff. There was an issue of a penalty fee that the organization charges. For me, this was supposed to just have been resolved when last year already during the audit. We could have just informed them that the Act doesn't allow us to charge penalty fees. There was no account. Actually, there was not even an amount of money that was recognized as penalty income in the books. So for me to have this finding here was not really reasonable. So we don't charge penalties. The policies don't have penalty charges. And then we also have, I've already spoken around the database cleanup in terms of active and non-active companies. That is being done. The levy follow-ups conducted. I've already spoken about that. We currently are following up on levies, and we are making sure that those that have given us declarations, we raise those invoices. And for those that have not given us declarations, hopefully we're going to be using the revenue estimation methodology that, you know, we're currently working on to then raise the revenue that we're supposed to raise. The cutoff addressed in the estimation methodology, I suppose last year, and even in the years back, the issue of the cutoff in this year, the way that we have gone back to read the GRAP standard and define what the taxable event is for the entity, and when can we recognize revenue in the entity. When we then went and interpreted that into our revenue methodology, it was clear that if we define it as having 4 taxable events, the event becomes no issue of a cutoff, because we have specific dates that the Act says we receive declarations on, and when we recognize in revenue in those periods, then there is no reason why we should be doing accrual or we should be having an issue of cutoff, because the Act tells us when we can recognize, and GRAP actually supports us to say, if you have not gotten into this stage, you would not have met the recognition criteria. So hopefully when the AG comes back with their findings or with their review of the methodology, they will concur with the way that we have now accounted for and spoken to these issues of the revenue qualifications. That for me, Chair, will be my submission to the committee.
Thank you very much. CEO, maybe you round up and then we can take questions.
Thank you, Chair. The COO will take us through the LOAs. COO, Abigail. Just quickly.
Thank you, CEO. Good morning once more, Chairperson and honorable members. The slide that is in front of us is just touching on our status in terms of pre-market approvals, specifically within the areas that we are regulating. So the performance to date, we are sitting at 92% out of a target of 95%, which is an improvement as compared to the previous financial year. And solely because we adopted a turnaround plan on operations, which is linked directly to the overall organizational turnaround plan. And part of the plan, what we aimed to do was to look at how we maximized our resources, how we dealt with new and old applications, amongst the other things, and also making sure that we are resourcing the plan in terms of movement of extra capacity that we've had due to the fact that there were additional staff that we brought on board. So in terms of also specifically the units performance, the automotive and legal metrology managed to achieve an average of 99% in terms of their performance. And next slide, please. As well as the fact that they did manage to achieve that and there was no backlog at the end of the financial year. For CMM is one of those units that when we adopted the turnaround plan, we focus on those units that had what we call outstanding applications and over 120 days, as well as the Electrotech unit, which I'll touch on later after talking to the performance of the CMM. With the CMM unit, at the end of the financial year, we're sitting at 65% in terms of performance, that is processing the LOAs within 120 days. And there were 5 of those that were over the 120 days, but at the end of the year, we managed to clear all the outstanding applications. And the applications that were outstanding were mainly due to the queries that the industry needed or the applicants needed to resolve with in relation to the safety footwear test reports. The next slide. So in terms of now the Electrotech, which is one of the units within the NRCS that has a high or a huge volume in terms of applications received. So on average, this unit receives 1,200 applications per month. And in terms of those applications that are received per month, this unit contributes to 72% of the total applications that are processed within NRCS. So at the end of the financial year, we were sitting at 1,390 applications on hand when we closed the year. And 887 of those we did manage to approve, and 320 were awaiting corrective action. And I think what I want to highlight in terms of this slide is that part of the turnaround plan, we also enforced our policies within NRCS. We do have a policy, the 30-day cancellation policy. And if you look at the issue of outstanding applications or backlog was as a result of the fact that we were sort of lenient to the industry, so to speak, to try and give them an opportunity, because what the policy says is that when you raise a finding in the application that we've processed, you have only 30 days as industry to correct whatever issue that would have been picked up. So now, in terms of applications where there was over 30 days where companies or industry haven't sort of came back to us to say, this is how we are resolving the issues, we did cancel those. So at the end of the year, as a result, we closed 2,400 applications in that regard. The last slide. So where are we at the moment in terms of our performance? So as at May, we are sitting with a total of 1,600 applications on hand, and 9.5% of those were 120 days, but we're expecting to clear those applications, and of course, given the turnaround plan that we've put in place, we'll clear those applications by July. And also, I've also indicated that you are strictly enforcing our policies, and also one of our approaches as part of the turnaround plan was adherence to the risk-based approach, where applications are dealt with based on the level of risk in terms of low, medium, and high risks. So since the adoption of that risk-based approach over and above the turnaround plan on operations that I have already alluded to, the Electrotech unit moved in terms of their annual performance to an overall 91%, meaning this is the performance only for this unit. And as I've indicated, it's one of those units that are really receiving a higher volume of applications. And this is a huge improvement of approximately plus minus 19% as compared to the previous year, which was 2018-19, where the performance was 74%. And we couldn't have done it without the commitment of our staff, our inspectors, and of course, our administrators and management within the NRCS. And the last 2 points is just to emphasize the fact that we will continue to make sure that we move closer to the target and even surpassing the 95%. And part of the interventions as part of that turnaround plan is the additional capacity that we have identified, and also additional temporary administrators that will form part of the team. And the commencement date for those would be the 1st of August due to the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic sort of we had to make sure as NRCS to prepare for the teams to come in terms of the requirements of the risk-adjusted strategy of government. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abigail. Chair, the CIO will take us through the modernization. That will be our last presentation. CIO Norma Temba.
Okay, Norma Temba, unmute. I'm sure they might be muted.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, CEO, as well as thank you, Chair. Maybe just a quick recap from an ICT perspective. We had 6 focus areas. The first one, it was the IT infrastructure review. The second one, it was the IT skills, capacity, and competency. The third one, it was the application modernization. Fourth one, data integrity and security. And the fifth one, it was the ICT governance program. And the last one, it was the excellence of customer service. So as you can see now on the screen, we focused on what are the main foundational projects that we require in order for us to have a successful modernization project. So the focus areas were around the bandwidth, the voice over IP, as well as the internal network for the NRCS. So if you can look at the right side on the progress that we've made so far, we have managed now to implement the bandwidth, adding, in terms of the speed that we require for the organization. But now, because we are also, on this COVID-19 pandemic, our focus area was to also ensure that we increase productivity for all employees, those who are working from home and the ones that are working in the office. Another area that we focused on, it was the local area network. Sorry, I don't know who's controlling the presentation. Yeah, also looking at the switches. So there we've received the code around March, which was 1.7. But then based on that, we then realized to say, probably we just need to refocus the ICT initiatives. And now we are looking at, a consolidated approach on all the local area networks for our network within NRCS. Next slide. And then another focus area, it was to ensure that for us to have a successful modernization, we've got, the ICT resources that are fit for purpose with the right skills. So we've managed now to publish the ICT resource tender. We had a briefing session, and also the tender is now closed. So we will be proceeding with the evaluation process. The tender was closed on the 22nd. Thanks. Second slide. Next slide. Okay, the third area, it was also, yes, to look at the business applications. As you have heard earlier, CEO, he mentioned, in terms of us trying to fix the existing JDE, but then we realized that, it's just too costly for us to do that. Hence, now we focused on the ERP approach, the enterprise resource planning, which is now at the appointment stage. And then also the change management program has already started, where employees are getting, some updates in terms of what is happening in terms of the modernization project. Next slide. Another focus area, it was around the ICT security within NRCS. Those were much more focused based on the audit findings that we had received previously. So therefore now we are focusing in that specific area. But remember, we did mention that what's going to be important is that we first ensure that the bandwidth is implemented there, so that, whatever more infrastructure that we are bringing into the network, then it's easy for us. So we are now going to focus, now managed to implement the bandwidth project. So our focus area, it will be bringing your different types of security that you require. We're looking at the dematerialized zone. We are looking as well at the patch management, which we have managed now to also bring in Microsoft to assist us in terms of the patch management, and also in terms of the vulnerability assessments as well. We started now focusing on the open source types of tools that we can utilize while we are trying to procure a fit for purpose tool on the vulnerability assessments. So this project, we planning to complete it by June 2021. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, in terms of the ICT policies, we have managed now to complete about 7 ICT policies. Previously, we have presented, in the committee. So some of these important policies, it was around the ICT governance policy and charter. We also looked at, we managed to also complete the disaster recovery policies, as well as, the acceptable usage of ICT assets within the organization. Amongst those, it's the 7 policies that were part of the audit findings by the AG. So those ones have been completed. And then the last one, it was just to look at what are the quick wins that we can start focusing for NRCS in terms of while we are trying to bring in the regulatory system. So what can we utilize in terms of the technologies that we have currently? So we managed to now start looking at the online registration form, where customers can now go online in the NRCS portal and be able now to register themselves, so that we now cut the manual process from the inspectors. Yes, so far we are doing that very successfully. We've also managed to implement, the Meet online form last year, and now we are also looking at more initiatives that the business are bringing to ICT. I think that's all, CEO. Thank you, Chair, as well.
Thank you, Noma.
I'm sure you can round out CEO, and then we can take comments, questions from members. CEO.
Thank you, Chair. I think what is key is to note the progress that has been made by the NRCS in addressing the 4 key issues in the human resource, the finance, and the approvals departments, as well as the ICT. The last slide, Chair, will touch on the impact of COVID-19 on the NRCS. We are finalizing the analysis of the impact. We will be considering and approving the report on the at the end of this month on the impact, but just on a high level, Chair, to highlight that the COVID-19 has also impacted us in terms of the approval applications. The number of applications has reduced during the periods of lockdown. Our ability to conduct and continue to implement market surveillance has been severely impacted. And this also impacted on our ability to chase on companies that are not able to declare levies, because those companies have been closed during lockdown level 5 and 4 respectively. Hopefully with the opening of the economy in advance level 3, we will be able to implement some of the turnaround plan interventions. Let me pause there, Chair, in the interest of time, and allow questions.
Okay, can we then actually allow the honorable members to take questions and clarity seeking or comments? Can I ask Secretariat?
Chair, Mr. Mbuyane,
yes.
Chair.
Mbuyane is the first one. Honorable Mbuyane.
Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity. Let me first welcome the presentation. Yes, there are some drastic changes in the entities since we last visited. So it's uploadable that there are some changes. Chairperson, I just have some few clarity seeking here. One, maybe it's the one of the fixing of the JDE, which is while we're embarking on the turnaround strategy. Is that feasible for fixing the JDE while we embarking on the turnaround strategy? That will be one. Then number 2 is the question of progress made in the implementation of the turnaround strategy. And also wanted to check in terms of that, because if you can identify the ICT modernization, it remains a concern about the delays in implementing the ICT modernization, because this will include the JDE, the change management system, and also the certification, the verification also around the ICT, which will include also the payroll packages that was implemented by SABS and so forth. And also, Chairperson, maybe the question of infrastructure for the legal metrology division regarding its laboratories conditions. They were not ideal located and they had challenges in terms of the heighting of the effect of the gravity in terms of in the lighting. So I want to check in terms of that, where are they on this one? Because I understand the change management program and the data management system that has been changed. And also we want to check as to, in terms of the security, cyber, how are they dealing with the issue? Chairperson, let me just pause there for now. But my challenge is the question of the loss of revenue. Does the turnaround strategy speak to the question of the revenue, including the database maintenance procedure, Chairperson? Also, they spoke of revenue cutting and finishing off. So I just want to have clarity on those ones. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, can I take the next member?
Chair, Mr. McPherson, Chair.
McPherson, Honorable McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mamadisa. I just want to know, surely it is becoming more and more obvious that the NRCS needs to go back into the SABS. It makes sense for both entities. As I said earlier to the SABS, that they are burning cash at a rapid rate, and I suspect the same is being said for yourselves, particularly with the inability to charge for services during the 3-month period, and obviously the depressed and decreased economy going forward. Are there any discussions between yourself and the SABS on reintroducing yourselves back into the SABS?
Okay, thank you.
Your organization going forward. Thank you.
Okay, can I take the next member?
Chair, there's no further questions indicated, Chair.
Okay, can I ask that maybe we go back to the CEO and the team just on the comments and questions that were asked?
Chair? Chair,
yes.
May I ask that Mr. Mamadisa stop sharing the document, Chair?
Oh, okay. Mamadisa, the document, you can actually remove the document from the screen, and then we can actually be able to proceed with the discussion. Can we ask you to just respond to the questions and comments made by members?
Thank you, Chair. I will start with Honorable Mbuyane. The feasibility of upgrading JDE at a time when we are implementing modernization, I've indicated that we have abandoned that project because it was becoming a fruitless and wasteful expenditure to spend 35 million on an obsolete and old system that we will discard in the next few months. So the priority for now is to implement the ERP system, which will cater for all financial reporting issues that JDE has been unable to assist us with. Also touching on the progress on the turnaround plan, the ICT modernization, I think we are at the final stage of the appointment of the ERP system. The evaluation has been done. A recommendation has been made to the bid adjudication committee to finalize the appointment. And because we are at a critical stage where we are about to finalize the appointment, I don't want to give more details into that until the appointment is finally done. The legal metrology labs, as you are aware, we are a tenant in SABS facilities, and we have been raising the issues with electrical interruptions in the labs and the situation in the labs. I've again requested the lead administrator to arrange a meeting between ourselves and them so that we can develop an action plan to resolve all those challenges in the LM labs. where it is feasible to do so. The Honorable McPherson, I think the question that you are posing, I will leave it to the DTI, because as the policymaker, they would have determined plausible costs for the entity to chart in the foreseeable future. It is not upon us to make the policy decisions, but insofar as we are concerned, the entities since separations have evolved to the extent that the merger will be a difficult one in the sense of where the entities find themselves after 10 years of the split. I would personally not recommend such a measure, but I will leave it to the DTI to respond. Thank you, Chair. Nomatamba, maybe you want to add on the cyber issues?
I don't recall a question around the cyber issue, CEO, unless if you want me to specifically touch some of the points.
Honorable Mbuyane raised a question on the cyber issues. What are we doing in that front to secure the organization?
Yes, so it's one of the slides that I've touched earlier around the ICT security, to say, you know, our main focus was just to make sure that we've got a bandwidth in place as the main project. So now the focus area, as I've mentioned, that we've started looking at the quick wins around the patch management, which we have partnered with Microsoft and is assisting us in the patch management of all our servers. And then the second one, it was around the vulnerabilities, where I've mentioned that currently we are looking at open source type of programs, which we have started now running in terms of the server environment, and, you know, identify the gaps and then being able to close some of the gaps while we are trying to get a fit for purpose solution, you know, around the vulnerability assessment. And then the last one, it was looking at the dematerialized zone, making sure that we've got, you know, right firewalls in our network. In terms of our wide area network, which is much more focused on the internet, there we are sorted in terms of the firewalls, but now the focus area is much on the local area network. Thank you.
Thank you, Nomatemba. Thank you, Chair. I think just to add on the issue of sanitizers that was raised during SABS presentation, I think for us, sanitizers are not currently regulated by the NRCS. Although we have developed a compulsory specification, that specification is awaiting approval by the minister, and thereafter it will enable us to monitor the quality of sanitizers that are free for all at the moment. In terms of the mask, NRCS regulate certain types of masks. The area of mask is one that is also regulated by SABRA, an entity within the Department of Health. So all the requirements of compulsory specifications must be met to ensure that the masks that are regulated are sold in the market. Thank you, Chair.
That we acknowledge the feedback. Obviously, this is our first meeting after having spoken, or first feedback after we've actually spoken to issues of the turnaround strategy. Obviously, I think from the side of the committee, there may be actually key areas that we may have to look at. But from the first report and from our report of the oversight visit, we will actually obviously then have a look at those regular feedback sessions. But I think for the intervention that the turnaround strategy should be, I think we will accept the presentation and feedback that we have got, and be able to actually thank the NRCS CEO and the team for the engagement we have had today, but also agree that we should be able to make further time to see how you stabilize, grow, and develop, because the turnaround strategy is what we really work together on to make sure that we have the very effective and efficient organization in terms of entity on the way forward. So thanks very much, CEO and team. And let's actually thank you, the department, DDG. I don't know if you want to make any comment before we round up.
Yeah, Chair.
Yes. DDG, Pele.
Thanks, Chair. I just written a comment on the box to ask if we can make a bit of an input. I think maybe to add on the question from Honorable McPherson on where do we see synergies between the institutions and whether there is a platform for us to consider the reimagining of the different entities. I think let me start off by saying, as part of the work that is being done by Cabinet, there was an indication that we need to look for synergies between the different SOEs and entities to bring greater clarity and integration to the work. On a practical side, on our side, what we have done is that we have instituted quarterly engagements between the 4 technical infrastructure to ensure that we are able to work seamlessly, because the work of the 4 entities is very much integrated. Part of what we do in that quarterly meeting is to ensure that we work towards supporting critical sectors that I have identified in the reimagined industrial strategy. And also we are able to streamline the work to create better policy coherence between the 4 institutions. We have also taken a lead in doing some technical work with our research partner through TIPS to look at to begin to deal with the question that Honorable McPherson is talking about where could be the duplications and also synergies between the 4 acts, and where there's elements within the work that is being done by the 4 institutions that justifies a bit of integration going forward. That is still work in progress. I think once we have come to a workable proposal, we will present back to the Minister, and the Minister's executive authority for the department will then have give a direction on how do we proceed from there. So we are working on an integration model, reducing duplications, finding synergies between the 4 institutions, and we will continue doing that work. As a way of concluding on my part, Chair, I think we also want to thank the Portfolio Committee for the guidance that you have provided to these 2 institutions in particular. The visit by the committee at the beginning of the year also identified a number of areas, and I think the lead administrator and Mr. Mamadise have illustrated in their presentation on where have we made strides in addressing the gaps that were identified. Obviously, the work is still very much work in progress, especially in the area of SABS. The other point that I also want to put on the table is that we are very acute to the challenges presented by COVID, especially to the financial sustainability and the ability of the institution to raise revenue. That's part of the ongoing work we need to do as a collective team with the executives to look at where can we find areas where we can streamline activities, probably reduce some programs and heighten the ones that can really provide us with greater levels to support industrial development much more strategically. Thank you, Chair. I will end there unless if my colleague, Dr. Chenge Dimani, would like to add anything.
Mani?
Thanks, Chair. I think my colleague from the DTI has really covered all that I wanted to say. I wanted to talk to the issues of overlaps in the mandates. As you know, the entities are supposed to be complementary in the work that they do, but we do realize that there are some overlaps. And in fact, in the case of
NRCS, you would know that legal metrology is with the NRCS. However, we have a whole entity that is set up to do metrology, which is the National Metrology Institute of South Africa. So you can immediately see that that's an area that needs some rethink. So also in the issues that we talk about now, the PP area, with the sanitizers, the NRCS talked to having a regulation, but the testing itself will be done by the SABS. So it's again an area that we can optimize. So that's what we are looking for when we have this project that is being run by ourselves and tips that will come with clear recommendations. I just want to thank the committee again for giving us the time to come and present the work that we are doing. Thank you.
Okay. I thought it was important to share that.
Okay. Can I just say hello? It does seem that can we actually make sure that the members are muted? Because I think there's some background information coming through. Can we allow the, just DDG, I'm sure you covered, and thanks very much for the feedback. And I think on our part, we are looking at the two entities working well together, that they can be combined, or they actually can be able to look at the overlap or duplication. It's an issue that has come out quite clearly in terms of comments from members as well. So let me allow that we actually accept the presentation, and thank you very much for the time. I'm sure DDG, you actually covered completely. We can then proceed, and thank you for having actually been able to come through and share with us moving forward. So can we proceed to the next item? DDG, I'm sure you covered.
Yes, Chair, I'm covered. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's thank the team then and ask that we go back, Secretariat,
Chair?
to the agenda. Yes.
Chair, the next item on the agenda is a formal consideration of the fourth quarter financial and non-financial report of EDD and DTI. Chair, we considered the first draft on the 19th, Friday the 19th of June, Chair. After deliberations, there was consensus on the content of the report, but the committee agreed that if there's any other parties who would like to submit concluding remarks or any recommendation, that it will be considered at today's meeting, Chair. We have not received any conclusions or recommendation from any other political party, Chair. So it's for the committee to proceed with the formal consideration of the fourth quarter financial and non-financial report of the DTI and EDD. If I may ask Margaret just to put it up on the screen, Chair, that will assist us in proceeding with the next item, Chair.
Okay. All right. Can you take us through then, Secretary, so that at least we can actually confirm? Because there were no additional from the last meeting submissions that were received. Okay.
That's correct, Chair. No additions. It's the same things that there was consensus on, Chair, and Mark is flagging those deliberations on the screen, Chair. So there was no additional additions to that, Chair.
Okay. Because 5.1 to 5.3 is what we see at the screen.
There's a hand from Honorable Mbuyane.
As I would have.
Okay.
Mr. Mbuyane, Chair.
Mbuyane.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think on this matter, we have dealt with the matter, and if there were no forthcoming other changes in terms of the program, for us it's just to go through maybe a page or a set of pages so that we formally consider the report, Chairperson, as a report of the committee. Thank you.
Okay. So I think because there were no additional ones, what we have on highlighted on the screen, Margot, you can just indicate those areas because we actually have 5.1 to 5.3 projected. It was actually presented, accepted. Yeah. And I think we can then actually indicate, Margot, if you take us through quickly without going to too much detail.
Okay, so Chair, the first conclusion is in relation to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economic targets.
Okay.
The second one is the committee welcoming the creation of jobs through the Youth Employment Service.
Okay.
The third one, we are acknowledging the lower than expected number of applications received by the incentive programs, which may have impacted on the targets around jobs created. The fourth one, we acknowledging that there was a target about a new iteration for the Industrial Policy Action Plan, but because of the change in policy into the reimagined industrial strategy, this has obviously not been met. The fifth one, we're welcoming the economic offered by the Industrial Development Corporation and the National Empowerment Fund under the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 6 is about the underspending in relation to the Teresano Construction Fund, and it being due to a number of construction companies that are undergoing contractions at the moment. 5.7, we're welcoming the gazetting of the regulations on the Competition Act related to price discrimination and buyer power. And then the 8th one is about the progress made in terms of the proposed export tax on ferrous and non-ferrous waste and scrap metal.
Sure. Secretary, I'm sure those are the issues we had on the previous meeting as recorded.
That's correct. That's correct, Chair. We have the hand of Mrs. Hermans and Ms. Yaku, Chair.
Hermans, and then Yaku. In that order, Hermans.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wish to, there was a move for the adoption of the report from Honorable Mbuyani, so I just want to second the adoption of this report, because there's nothing new from when it was presented to us previously, and the meeting was in agreement around that. Thank you, Chair.
Yaku.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to register the EFF's abstention from comment on this report. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further comments or any objection?
Chairperson, I want, Chair.
Yes.
I want to support all those who said the report must be adopted, Chair. Just adding my voice.
Oh, adding voice, it's fine. So because I think there was a mover and seconder, so I think we're noting Yako's part, and yes. I'm not sure if ever there's any objection or any point for noting. Can we do that? But for now, it's only actually checking if ever there's any objection. Can we then? Okay, Secretariat.
Chair, it seems that there was a move and a seconder, and Ms. Yaku abstained, and no further objections. So the report is adopted and duly adopted by the chair, by the committee chair.
Thank you very much. The report then is agreed to in terms of its formal consideration in our meeting today. Can we take the next item on the agenda? The meeting is agreed. The report is agreed to.
Chair, the next item is committee business. It deals with just the NLC, the update on the NLC process, Chair. I don't know if you wish to comment on that, Chair.
Yeah, well, basically, I thought it might be actually helpful because of all the issues that we're actually looking at in terms of the issue of the NLC. I know committee members are actually quite unhappy that it seems the NLC is taking too much space in our meetings. I actually do understand that, and I agree that in the process of being able to look at the matter, to take the process forward, there was actually a legal opinion we requested from the parliamentary legal team. So I thought maybe what we may have to check, Secretariat, if ever there's feedback on that side, because in the building blocks of this issue, that was one issue which was quite strategic for us to be able to actually consider as a committee to take the process forward. Can I just check that?
Chair, we have not received the opinion from our legal division, Chair, so we're still awaiting the opinion, Chair.
Yeah. So let me just say then, can the committee then allow that we should actually be able to circulate, because I think we were expecting to have received it already by today. We will actually make sure that the legal opinion gets circulated to all committee members. And in
Chair, switch on your video, please.
Is it cut off? No, it's
no,
on.
We can see you, Chair.
Oh, but the video, the muting is on. Hermans, you're sitting at the wrong corner because you don't see me.
No, now I see you, Chair.
You got me. Yeah. Can I just say that? Okay.
Chair, there's two hands, Chair.
Okay. Two hands. Who's
Mr. Cuthbert and Mr. Mbuyane, Chair.
Okay, Cuthbert and Mbuyane.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, does that then mean that the legal opinion takes precedence over the MANCO meeting that you had in the report back from that MANCO meeting? And what is this parliamentary legal opinion supposed to do? What is the opinion for when there is clear precedent that other entities and companies within the DTI have come to present? I can't understand why there's a difference. And then also, if you applied your mind to the new information that I introduced to the committee and whether or not that was distributed to all committee members last week. And then, Chair, when are we expecting a possible response regarding this legal opinion so that we can also apply our minds to this? Lastly, Chairperson, what I would like to know is, have you received any further complaints regarding the way in which this has been handled by the NLC? I remember you distributing a letter from the USCA. Have you subsequent to that received any other complaints, and could you please provide us with the relevant details of that, Chairperson?
Okay, Mbuyane.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chairperson. I think mine was just to acknowledge, and we're waiting for a legal opinion from the parliamentary processes. Then we'll submit, Chairperson, to say, let us wait for those legal opinions so that we take a decision that is informed even legally. We cannot be rushed to have clouded issues, NLCDs. Now we're waiting for a response, and the response is saying we are not ready in terms of the legal opinion. Then when we think it will be ready and be presented to the committee. I think that is what we have to discuss. But what else, the correspondence from whosoever that deal with the issue, I think will be clouding issues, Chairperson. Let's deal with the issue of an LLC. If we're not ready, then we'll ready next committee meeting. Thank you, Chairperson. That will be my proposal.
Chair, Mr. McPherson, Chair.
Okay, McPherson.
Thanks very much. Could you please provide us with the letter that you wrote to the Parliamentary Legal Services Division requesting the opinion? I would like a copy of that, and I think every person in the committee needs a copy of that, please. And what informed your decision to write to them in the first instance? I think that Honourable Cuthbert's request is a valid one. Whether any other correspondence or complaints have been received by yourself. But I really want to express my deep concern at the matter or the way in which this committee is handling this issue. There seems to be, and this is my opinion, that there is an attempt to obfuscate from the very serious issues that are being withheld and hidden from this committee. And this committee is well within its rights to request any and all information from an entity that reports to Parliament. I can tell you right now, we do not need a legal opinion for that. That is a basic tenet of parliamentary privilege and our responsibility as legislators. So I also want to put the committee on notice that should we fail to ultimately exercise our rights, we ourselves, as the Democratic Alliance, will seek a judicial review, because we are not going to be slow played by the NLC or any fronts for the NLC which deem to act on behalf of interested parties. And so, Chair, I think it is absolutely critical that we divorce ourselves from the circus that is going on around this issue, that we do our jobs as legislators, and that we act in a manner that which protects the public purse and not those that have something to hide. Thank you.
Chair, your mic, Chair. Chair, your mic is not on, Chair.
Chairperson. Chair.
Who else wanted to make a point, Andre?
Ms. Mantashe, then follow her Mr. Cuthbert, Chair, and Mrs. Hermans.
Can I just say, I hear members are actually wanting to debate. I wanted just to take a point. Can I take the last two hands? Is it Mantashe and Hermans?
And Cuthbert, Chair.
Cuthbert did actually speak earlier.
Yes.
Can I actually then ask Mantashe and Hermans? Then I will actually make my explanation, because I think the point the members are wanting to discuss when I was making a suggestion. Mantashe and Hermans.
Thank you, Chairperson. I at the African National Congress, we will listen to what you are saying as the chair. If it is your view that you must seek legal opinion, we'll accept that, because we are keen to understand if there are any irregularities in that institute. But we will not be labeled when we do that as friends of any entity of the department. If that he has on the entity, bring it to the committee so that we can be on the same platform, on the same level of understanding things. But we will not accept him threatening us threatening us that will take us to court. He may do so, but we will wait for the direction of the chairperson of the committee, because we will not listen to a shadow minister.
Okay. Can I ask Hermans? Hermans?
Thank you, Comrade Chair. As we said in our last portfolio committee meeting, we as the African National Congress have a very clear interest in accountability and reporting, and our oversight role that this committee plays over all its entities, including the NLC. When you, in the last meeting, said that you wanted to get a legal opinion, there was no political party that was against that. So I think let us support you in the action you want to take, get the report, and then have a discussion as a committee. Thank you very much.
Can I just can I actually just say my bit? Members have actually had an opportunity to talk to the issue. The committee did receive various allegations of
Chairperson, point of order, please.
Who's talking?
It's Cuthbert, Chairperson. I don't mean to interrupt your response. Chairperson, I think that Honourable Hermans states the fact. Yes, Chair.
Cuthbert, what is the point of order? Please don't talk to each other, because you are talking to me. I raised the issue. I wanted to actually give you sense of where we are. Please don't talk to each other. Cuthbert, what's the point of order?
Chair, I am trying to address you. Chair, Honourable Herman stated that in the last meeting that the committee had decided that they were going to source a legal opinion. Chair, that is a factual inaccuracy, and therefore I ask her to withdraw that statement, because that did not happen in the last meeting. You can go look at the recording and you can look at the minutes of the meeting. Purely, you said there was going to be a management report after you had considered it at your management committee. So let's not obfuscate issues here, Chairperson.
Can I just make a summary? Because I've tried to actually summarize the issues. I note what you say as members, but I don't want to entertain the debate at this stage. Let me just say the committee received various allegations of maladministration with regard to the NLC. In response to these allegations, the committee had written to the minister on whether these allegations are true. Further, I think in terms of outcome, the minister responded in a letter dated 15 June 2020 on the actions of the department, and it was undertaken to address these allegations. Once the investigations are concluded, a report would be forwarded to the committee. I'm saying that's the first part. Furthermore, the committee also received communication from stakeholders requesting that beneficiary information should not be published unless provision in legislation and regulations that govern such requests for information are followed. Further, there's an issue of members of the committee also requested that a list of beneficiaries' information should be submitted to the committee. I would actually say the point of the outcome, based on the response from the NLC of the 8th of June 2020 in respect to questions posed during the committee meeting, I requested an opinion from Parliament's legal division. This was to determine whether the assertion by the Commission that it cannot disclose the names of the beneficiaries of the fund to Parliament and or the public in terms of reference to specific legislation and regulations is indeed correct. The opinion should not provide guidance around what parameters would govern the disclosure of such information. The committee is still awaiting the legal opinion, because I did report that I think Honorable McPherson was saying I should circulate the letter I sent to the legal division of Parliament. I will do that, but further, the legal opinion in terms of the division of Parliament will be what we would actually, I was expecting to have it by this meeting, but it actually not so. We'll follow through. We will circulate it to members. And Honorable McPherson, in terms of your input, I think we should be able in our next meeting to get an update. You remember how we resolved previously? We said we will look at an update on this issue. It's actually the publication of beneficiary lists, because that was the main point. But at this stage, because I think one actually did raise the point of a legal opinion, we would actually then circulate my letter requesting the legal opinion. We will circulate the legal opinion, because I think it should be due. In fact, I thought I should be having it by today. So those are the two issues I will be circulating through. We will then, in our next meeting, have an opportunity to talk about this matter. Who said what and what issue was actually raised by whom would actually not be an issue. We will then engage as a committee with a legal opinion. I would actually send the letter that I've sent requesting that legal opinion. And then we are going to actually have a discussion on our next meeting. We'll actually have to actually allow time for us to consider this issue based on the legal opinion, which I have requested as the chairperson of the committee. Can we actually leave it at that? Because I think unless maybe we want to have a discussion, can we agree to actually historically it worked or what process was actually followed? We can actually confirm by that time, and then we can be able to actually look at what is before us and take a decision as a committee on the way forward on this specific issue as the portfolio committee. Can we actually get that as an agreement of the committee that in our next meeting, we will actually have a discussion on this matter based also on the information we'll receive in terms of the legal opinion? Are there any comments?
Agreed, Chair.
Okay, Hammonds?
Agreed, Chair.
Okay. Are there any other comments by honorable members? If not, can we actually conclude in that way and actually proceed to the next item? Secretariat?
Chair, the next item is the consideration of the third quarter program, Chair. Chair, we've distributed the program as well as the rationale for the program, Chair, to members. So it's for members now to comment and discuss the issue, Chair.
Okay. I'm sure members did receive that. Can you be able to flight it so that we can just have a quick look at that? So that's the program we have before us. If ever I can just get Secretary, just quickly speak through the program.
Margot, if you can.
Margot?
Chair, I will ask Margot to speak to the rationale behind each of the items on the program, Chair. Just with regard to the first item, the Minister was originally scheduled to meet with us on this coming Friday, but due to the House sitting from 9 till 1, the House Chairperson has requested that no meetings are allowed, hence the shift of that particular meeting to the 28th of July.
Okay.
If Margaret just want to quickly go to the rationale, if members want that, then we can proceed, Chair.
Yeah, it will be good, Margot, if you can just take us through.
Okay, Chair. So in general, the focus of the program is there's a large portion of it focused more on what we are required to do in terms of our budgetary oversight. So we have scheduled a meeting as requested by the committee to look at the revised 2020-21 APP. However, at this stage, we're uncertain whether or not we'll be required to report on it, but that I'm sure we'll get some guidance on going forward. And then we're looking at the DTIC's first quarter, as well as a number of entities. We've tried to cover 3 of the outstanding entities that we've not had any engagements with, namely the NCT, so that's the National Consumer Tribunal, the National Credit Regulator, and the National Gambling Board, as well as the BBBE Commission, a meeting with the SABS and the NRCS in the first quarters. Yes, and the National Country. We've also done with this meeting, with this program, is on the 29th of July, we've scheduled a meeting around ongoing trade negotiations and existing trade agreements and trade relations. So we'll try and do that every 6 months to get updates on what's happening there.
That will also include the Brexit negotiations, update on that, I would assume.
And implementation of the current agreements. And then we look, we've now scheduled a monthly update on COVID-19 interventions. So the first one will be on the 4th of August, and the second one, I think, is on the 1st of September. Then for this quarter, we've tried to focus also on getting rid of outstanding issues from the legacy report, as well as follow-ups from previous terms. So one of those issues are that there's a number of new legislation that was passed, but that may not be fully implemented at this stage or not implemented at all. So we've asked for an update on that on the 5th of August. And then the other big thing was in terms of the IP Laws Amendment Act, and that alignment to the Protection, Promotion, Development and Management of the Indigenous Knowledge Act, which is a DST bill or act. We were asking them in one of our minutes for follow-up in terms of what's happened with the alignment and progress in relation to the regulations in that regard. So those are the other substantive matters on the program. And then we'll have to include for committee business the NLC legal opinion discussion as well.
Can I ask the committee then to actually consider and indicate if we can proceed with the proposed program before the committee? Honorable members.
Mr. Mbuyani's hand was up, Chair.
Honorable Mbuyane.
Ms. Mantashe.
And Mantashe.
Yeah. Okay. Chairperson.
Yes. Mbuyane, you're on the floor.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think let us as a committee agree in principle with the program of the committee while we're still waiting for parliamentarian as well, maybe for parliament to give us their program in terms of the second of the fourth quarter, so that will be able to assist us as well. But principally, I would like to propose that we adopt the agenda, the program as it presented. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Can I take
Chair, Ms. Mantashe, Ms. Mutahung, and Mr. McPherson, Chair.
Mantashe.
Chair, I also want to agree with Honorable Mbuyane on that we must provision.
Mantashe, you actually cutting off. Okay, let's take with Taung. Mantashe is cutting.
Thanks, Chair. I second.
I was saying, Chair. Saying.
Mantashe, your line is bad. Mantashe, your line is really, really bad. Can we take
Thanks, Chair. I second the proposal of Honorable.
Okay, she was members are actually fading out now. Okay.
Mr. McPherson, Chair.
McPherson.
Thanks very much. I might have missed it, but I'm a bit surprised that there's nothing in the program that will deal with the referral back to Parliament of the national, of the Copyright Amendment Bill and the Performers Bill. Is there going to be a session where we're going to be taken through why those bills were sent back, and also maybe have an opportunity to refresh some of our colleagues who were warned that these bills were never going to pass constitutional muster? I think that would be just a wonderful, refreshing session for those who were in the fifth Parliament and were warned about the situation.
No.
Those issues are covered. We were going to pick up on them, McPherson, as the next point, because I did actually have them summarized to be able to actually update you on that. And I think, which means you are in agreement that we proceed, but make sure that we actually accommodate or add the issue relating to copyright. So that's what you're saying, Honorable McPherson. Secretariat.
Chair, on the issue raised by Mr. McPherson, although the matter was ATC, it was not yet referred to our committee.
Sure.
And as a result, it wasn't part of the program because the Speaker has a right to refer it to any committee, and it wasn't yet referred to our committee. But as you indicated, Chair, if it's referred to our committee, it will be accommodated on the program, and the committee will be taken through. There will be a session as indicated by Mr. McPherson. But to date, it was not yet referred to us, so hence it's not on the program, Chair.
Yeah. So I think let's actually just say that on that one, because Presidency did make a public statement on the matter. We did actually pick up on that through the management committee of the committee. And I think we actually have summarized the approach which we can be able to look at without taking much of your time. Thanks very much, Honourable McPherson, for raising the point. It is accommodated. So I would assume that the members are comfortable that we proceed with the program as presented before them, and we actually can then proceed to actually be able to work around that. Unless there's any
Chair,
other issue.
One more question from Mr. McPherson, Chair.
McPherson. McPherson.
Thanks, Chair. Maybe it would be a good idea to put out a statement on behalf of the committee welcoming the President referring the bill back to Parliament. I think that that would be a great statement that I could agree to, and I think would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, if I was part of the 5th Parliament, I think it would have been easy for me to agree with you. But because I was not part of the 5th Parliament, I would actually have to make sure that we manage whatever outcomes, even if it was from yourselves when you're sitting on the 5th Parliament, for us to be able to know what's actually happening. But on my part, I think your point is actually okay, but I don't think it's an agenda item for our 6th Parliament committee. But I think in terms of how we approach the issue moving forward, you won't have anything missed. We will actually deal with things properly. But thanks for the comment, Honourable McPherson. Can we then agree that the members...
Chairperson.
Chair, Mr. Mbuyane, Chair.
Mbuyane?
Yeah, Chairperson, thank you. I think the issue, we are not doing justice to the issue of the program, Chairperson. The program was presented, the program was proposed to be adopted, and there were seconders, Chairperson. Now we are discussing issues that are not even in the program. It will give us challenges, Chairperson, because we're dealing with 5th term, what said what, who won in the 5th term. It won't going to assist us here now. We are not standing, Chairperson. I propose that we adopt the program, and there were seconders. We should have dealt with that matter like that, Chairperson. Thank you. Because, Chairperson, as much as we are a portfolio of trade and industry, we're still waiting for Parliament to give us, as a committee, an authority to deal with the matter. Because the matter was referred back by the President to Parliament, and we are waiting a Parliament to give us an authority as a committee to deal with the matter. You can't just lament and deal with other issues, Chairperson. Thank you for indulgence.
Chair, Ms. Yaku want to speak, Chair?
Yeah. Well, the point is that members would like to talk to each other. Can I just give my summary in taking the issue forward in terms of just the additional copyright? But Yako, can I take you first? Then I will actually read in summary, because on the issues members choose to discuss is issues that actually may not be missed. But it's a point, obviously, that we have considered them. Yako, can I take your comments?
Thank you, Chairperson. I think I'm with you on matters I think that were dealt with in the 5th Parliament. As new members in the committee, would also like to be appraised as to why the bill was sent back, what are the new developments, and what can we do as a committee. So I think to send a statement now would be premature if we have not, in the 6th Parliament, as new members, also discussed it. Thank you.
So let me just read through on what we have discussed and engaged at Management Committee. I'll just put it as an item to say the Secretariat has prepared the 3rd quarter program for consideration. This was distributed with the rationale to inform the program. Issue relating to remitted bill means a bill which the President, on account of reservations about its constitutionality, has, in terms of Section 79 of the Constitution, referred back to the Assembly for reconsideration. The next point is that the ATC, dated 22 June 2020, referred to the remittance of the copyright and of the Performance Protection Amendment Bill for the National Assembly reconsideration, as it was to be the Speaker's prerogative to refer any matter to a committee. It would be premature to discuss any process until such referral was made. So we are aware, but we actually don't manage that process. But I think in terms of what I'm actually raising, at management committee, the issue was actually considered in that way. But obviously, I think in the engagement with the Secretariat, I thought the summary will actually be making complete sense. But the portfolio committee members do have a right to have their own discussion when we get to the committee looking at these specific issues. It was not neglected. We did not leave it out. We actually noted it, but at this stage, we thought we cannot actually put it as a program issue to take the process forward. Can I ask that you please accept that summary of what we considered? And in terms of the program before you, I'm sure the committee is happy that we adopt and proceed to implement as proposed. Can we take the next item? I'm sure the program of the committee is agreed to.
Chair, it's beyond 12 o'clock, Chair. We have minutes to consider, Chair. It's 6 minutes past 12. The committee should make a decision if they want to proceed with the minutes or hold it over till next term, Chair.
Can I just say it will actually obviously be incorrect to continue beyond the time allocated because there might be complications as well. Can I just say to members, there are 5 sets of minutes which were circulated. Please actually look through them. And can we have this as the next meeting item for us to be able to process? And can I ask that we look at the next item on the agenda? Secretariat, unless there are any issues you may want to raise
no, Chair.
For our next meeting.
Chair, no, Chair. We will, in terms of the third program, we will submit the program for approval to the House Chairperson, Chair. In terms of the next item, I want to ask Margaret to flag the minutes.
Okay, it's just if there's an intrusion.
So you're going to eat lunch late, innit? Because I'm so busy.
Continue.
Chair, Margot flagged the minutes of the 29th of April, Chair.
Are you listening to me?
First meeting. Raja, just put your mic off.
Yeah, so Andre.
Chair, Margot to flag the minutes of the 29th of April, Chair. That was the first minute that we will consider, Chair. That was distributed.
Yeah, order, Chair.
Can I
order,
just say
Chair.
that the suggestion, Andre, was to say, can we look at the minutes on the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, and in terms of today's meeting, can we work to the conclusion?
Okay, so
I was actually just saying, I'm not sure if Secretary have got any issue, particularly the next meeting of this committee. I think we can confirm that date. And yes.
Chair, the next meeting, if you're not dealing with minutes, is on the 28th of July if our program is approved by the House Chairperson. But we'll keep members abreast about that the outcome of that, Chair.
So it's 28th of June.
July.
It's July 28th. Okay. Yeah. Can I just then say, honorable members, can we actually conclude our meeting? Because obviously going beyond the time, there's going to be sitting of plenary as well. And I think it will be unfair to actually take too much time off the committee. But thanks very much for your participation. Our next meeting is on the 28th of July. And we hope that we can be able to take a bit of discussion of our minutes on that meeting as well. Can we then conclude our meeting? And thanks the members and the Secretariat very much for their participation. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mulder, Chair.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. It's fine, Chair. It's fine.
All right. Can I ask that we then thank everybody and conclude our meeting? Thank you very much. Our meeting is adjourned. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.